The atmosphere in the conference hall was electric. Cameras rolled. Bright lights illuminated a stage lined with political heavyweights, economists, and media personalities. This was an international economic forum streamed live to audiences across North America and Europe. The panel's purpose was clear: discuss global trade relations, inflation, and cross-border cooperation. But what unfolded would be remembered not for policy insights, but for a moment that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles from Ottawa to Washington. On stage sat Caroline Leavitt, a rising figure in conservative American politics. Known for her sharp rhetoric and populist leanings, she had built her brand on blunt, unapologetic commentary, but no one expected the pivot she was about to make. As the conversation moved from trade policy to geopolitical tensions, Leavitt leaned forward toward her microphone. Her voice carried a confident edge. "Let's stop pretending Canada sets any standard worth following," she said. "They're passive. They cave to pressure. Frankly, I'm tired of hearing them lecture us about civility or values. They couldn't even stand up to a truck convoy without crumbling." The moderator's eyebrows shot up. A murmur rippled through the audience. It wasn't just the words, it was the condescension in her tone, the smirk that accompanied them, and the dismissive way she brushed aside another panelist's attempt to interject. This wasn't a policy disagreement. It was a direct insult, aimed at the character of an entire nation. Newsrooms from Vancouver to Toronto lit up within minutes. Clips of the exchange began circulating online. Headlines appeared almost instantly. Caroline Leavitt slams Canada social. Media erupts. American politician mocks Canadian resolve. Canadian politicians across the spectrum moved quickly to condemn her remarks, calling them disrespectful, embarrassing, and damaging to U.S.-Canada relations. Even in Washington, officials scrambled to clarify that Leavitt's comments reflected her personal views, not official American policy. But the response that would define the moment came from another figure on the panel. Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, sat quietly during Leavitt's tirade. Known for his calm demeanor and meticulous intellect, Carney had a reputation for never being rattled. After she finished, Carney adjusted his microphone. The room went still. Even the ambient hum seemed to fade. "Ms. Leavitt," he began, his voice steady, "Canada's strength has never been in saber-rattling or showmanship. It's in building alliances, upholding the rule of law, and earning trust. And if your definition of strength is volume and insults, then I invite you to revisit history. The world respects consistency more than bravado." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't linger. But the words landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. The audience erupted, not with jeers or cheers, but with an applause that grew from a few claps to a rolling wave. Cameras flashed. Reporters typed furiously. Leavitt shifted uncomfortably in her seat, trying to play off the moment with a nervous chuckle. "Well," she said, "I guess I struck a nerve." But the damage was already done. Carney's measured words, delivered without a trace of hostility, had cut through more effectively than any counterattack could. Viewers watching live felt the contrast, her bluster against his composure. By the time the panel ended, Carney's response was trending worldwide. The Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, released a short statement praising Carney's dignified defense of Canadian values. Politicians from all parties echoed the sentiment, but the real wave of reaction came from the public. Canadians took to social media, posting stories of kindness, resilience, and quiet strength. A new hashtag emerged, "Sorry Not Sorry Caroline," dominating trends for 2 straight days. The tone was both proud and cheeky. For once, national pride wasn't ignited by a hockey victory or a holiday. It came from a single, calm statement on a global stage. In the United States, reactions were split. Some far-right commentators praised Leavitt for speaking hard truths, but most mainstream voices criticized her remarks as unprofessional and diplomatically reckless. Late-night comedians roasted her delivery. Policy analysts warned that the comments could harm future U.S.-Canada cooperation on climate policy, trade, and infrastructure. One international foundation even pulled her from an upcoming panel. The consensus among moderates was clear. This was not bold leadership, it was a miscalculation. Mark Carney, meanwhile, refused interviews. He didn't post the viral clip. His office issued only one line: Mr. Carney believes respectful discourse is the foundation of meaningful progress. He remains committed to dialogue over division. That single sentence traveled far, shared across news outlets, quoted in opinion pieces, and praised as a rare example of restraint in an age of outrage. Leavitt, attempting damage control, made the talk show rounds, claiming her remarks were taken out of context. But the recordings told a different story. Her tone had been unmistakable, and her follow-up interviews, where she dismissed Carney as a bureaucrat trying to sound profound, only deepened the backlash. Even some of her political allies began to distance themselves. Analysts pointed out that Carney's response had not only diffused the insult, it had redefined what winning a public exchange could look like. Universities began using the moment in classes on political communication. This wasn't a shutdown, one professor noted. It was a masterclass in intellectual leadership. As the days passed, Leavitt's political momentum began to falter. Donors grew cautious. Scheduled appearances were quietly canceled. The incident became a case study in how arrogance, paired with a lack of humility, can derail even a promising career. For Canada, the moment had a different legacy. It reminded the world and themselves that politeness does not mean weakness. Editorials celebrated Carney's poise as the embodiment of Canadian diplomacy, firm without being hostile, confident without being loud. In offices, cafes, and classrooms, people replayed the clip. They admired the precision of his language and the way he refused to be dragged into a shouting match. Back in Washington, Leavitt's team released a statement calling the exchange a moment of misinterpretation. But critics weren't convinced. The contrast between her defensive posture and Carney's quiet authority had already set in the public mind. Months later, Carney's remarks were framed and displayed in a Canadian University Economics department, alongside quotes from Keynes and Mandela. For many, it wasn't just about defending a country, it was about proving that true influence doesn't require aggression. A year after the incident, Carney returned to the same forum. The auditorium was packed, the air charged with anticipation. Everyone remembered. He stepped to the podium and began with one line. "This time let's begin with listening." The crowd laughed knowingly, applauding before he even moved on to his main topic, economic resilience and global unity. His presence alone was a reminder of the night. He had turned an insult into a defining example of leadership. Caroline Leavitt's career continued, but the aura of unstoppable momentum was gone. Her name had become shorthand in political circles for the dangers of overreach. The shadow of that panel moment followed her from one appearance to the next. In the end, the story was bigger than either of them. It was about what kind of leadership the world needs. Now, leaders who can rise above, who understand that real strength is not in dominating a room but in dignifying it. Mark Carney hadn't silenced Caroline Leavitt with anger. He had done it with something far more lasting, respect earned and unwavering. And in doing so, he reminded the world that in an age of constant outrage, grace still speaks the loudest.